Welcome to Locality's Making Bank podcast, where we continue our exploration of South Florida's entrepreneurial landscape with host Keith Costello, co-founder and CEO of Locality Bank. Sit back, relax, and let South Florida visionaries guide you on an entrepreneurial journey from tribulation to triumph, sharing the very stories that have shaped them.
James Robert Lay, welcome to Locality Bank's Making Bank podcast.
Man, I'm so excited to share time with you, buddy.
That's awesome.
You're so welcoming.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to tone this down because this guy's got so much energy and I'm going to try to like breathe and keep it, but I may not be able to contain him. So that's a warning.
Yeah. I'll follow your lead.
No, I don't think so. I think you're not a follow the lead guy.
No, not at all.
Well, this is going to be a lot of fun because, James Robert Lay has really distinguished himself in the financial services industry as a leader with 2 best-selling books. And we're going to get into all that. And he's, again, transitioning and changing and looking at new things. And we're going to dig into all that. But he's also a really good friend. And it's great to have him on here today. His wife, Delina's here in the audience with us. So we love having somebody here besides Ryan, who's always here. Thank God, keeping us on track. So anyway, we're going to start off just talking about, we were curious about your upbringing and your family. Mm-hmm. Where were you born? And tell us about your family.
So I was born in Houston, Texas.
Okay.
Born and raised there, went to school. I came from it was not an entrepreneurial background.
Okay.
My mom was a school teacher. My dad was an engineer, worked in corporate America. And when I was 18 years old, I read a book that it sent me down a different trajectory. It was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it was my first foray into the entrepreneurial mind, except I was already entrepreneurial at that point, just didn't know it. Mm. So my first entrepreneurial venture was in 5th grade. I was 10 years old. It was Christmas break. And I woke up one morning and my neighbor across the street, he was selling lemonade in December. And I thought to myself, what an idiot. So I went and I got some hot water and some cocoa. I set up my lemonade stand across the street from him in my driveway. And I said, hot cocoa, hot chocolate, 50 cents. He was selling lemonade for 25 cents. And I sold more that day. Did
he file bankruptcy? You put him out of business?
I saw like when the cars started stopping at my house, and I kind of felt bad for him.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things that's like, this is fun. It was fun to look for ways to help people and really create value. And then that led into some other entrepreneurial ventures in junior high, mowing yards, washing cars. And in fact, I would mow yards and wash cars, and then I pay my brother $1 to wash my clothes. I hated washing clothes. And then in high school, if you think about the internet, 1994, something that I wrote about in my second book, Banking on Change, that was such a pinnacle year of transformation because the way that we would connect would change forever. So in 1999, 5 years after the internet reaches the mass consciousness of humanity, another entrepreneurial venture pops up with Napster.
And how old are you now?
I'm a junior, senior in high school.
Okay.
At this point. And I was a nerd. I was one of the very first.
You still are.
I still am. That's the thing. Like,
you're big and strong, but you're still a
once
nerd
a nerd, always a nerd. And I always tell the kids at school when I go and do classes, I'm like, the kids you're picking on right now, they're going to grow up and be your boss one day. So you better be nice to them. And but I had a CD burner and I had DSL. And if you remember DSL, it was 128-bit on a download. So you could download a song from Napster in about like 3 to 5 minutes. And so I'd go to school and I'd ask the kids at school, what songs do you want? I'll give you 20 songs for $10. And because at the time a CD was like $18, $20, but how many songs would you want? Maybe 1, 2 if you're lucky. And so it was just another way of looking at opportunity, creating value. And then that led to one thing, led to another until I got into a punk rock band my freshman year of college. So
what was the name of that band?
That band was Perfect Balance.
Perfect Balance.
Perfect Balance.
Wow.
And, my wife is here today. It's funny when we look back. I mean, she was there back then. She was a friend, but I told her at 18 that I was going to marry her.
Wow.
And
I didn't hear this story before.
Oh, this is brand new. So she said, "You're crazy." And that was a cleaned up version of "you're crazy" for this podcast.
Okay.
Throwing a couple of explicits with that. But no, she said, "You're crazy." And I said, no, because it's like, once I figure out what I want, that's it. I'm done. It's like, I think Napoleon Hill wrote about this. It's like definitiveness. It's like, once you determine what you want, you just go after that. You walk through the door, you close the door behind you, and you just don't look back. And so that's how I've operated my life. And her father was such a key inspiration in just my own entrepreneurial journey, because he was an immigrant. He came here, didn't speak any English, and to see what he did. And so when we were in college and I was in this band, we were sitting down in the library one day, and she said, "Your band sucks. You need to do something with your life. Make some meaning of it." And so that very day I quit my band, went down to the courthouse. I got a DBA. And so this was 2001, and started designing websites for local businesses, mom and pops.
Yeah.
And
so did you know how to code and everything? Or
I was taking some classes in college, but just a curious learner, always teaching myself. And so I was learning a lot. And around that time, I had a friend call me up from high school, and he was going to Baylor University in Texas. And he said, this college bookstore thing, it's not a good deal. And I said, no, it's not a good deal, because you buy a book for $150, $200. And maybe if you sell it back, you're lucky if you'd get 10. And so we built a platform called bearswap.com. And he was on campus, and he was going out and recruiting and building the community of students. And we were bypassing the bookstore, because we were connecting students with students to
cut out the
trade books, cut out the middleman.
Wow.
Trade books. And he was selling ads to local businesses. We had eyeballs. And so we had this idea of, we're going to go take this to other universities and license it, and help other college students make some money. And around 2003, 2004, there was another guy who had a much bigger vision of connecting people online, out of Harvard, Mark. So the Facebook took our little bear swap idea
and ran with it.
And we started seeing our numbers drop, and people were going to the Facebook
right.
And then from there, got into the banking space, started building websites for banks and credit unions. And
so this is while you're still in college, or after you graduate?
This is while I'm still in college.
While you're still in college, you started doing websites for banks and stuff, huh?
Yeah.
How'd you happen to go to the bank space?
It was a dark, stormy Thursday night. And it was at an American Marketing Association event at the University of Houston, Clear Lake. I had a booth, and I was looking to recruit a team member as an employer. And the VP of marketing from JSC Credit Union in Houston walks in, and he says, "We're looking to get our website redesigned and redeveloped." So this would have been about 2003, 2004 time period. And he said, "Have you ever worked with a bank or a credit union?" So, "What's a credit union?" And he said, "Well, call me after the new year." And so called him after the new year, and about 2 weeks later, that was our first financial institution that we had worked with. And then I saw an opportunity once again to help and to create value. But that took us up to about 2012. We had a digital agency, and that's where a lot of, I would say, conflict and tension in this story starts to come in, because it's like I took the business up to 7 figures multiple years in a row. So,
and just doing websites?
Just doing websites, digital marketing.
And all for banks and credit unions?
That's it.
Okay.
Speaking a lot of different conferences and events. And my wife, she wasn't a happy camper at the time because I was gone, figuratively, literally. I'd be at home. I wasn't home. We had 2 kids, and she called me out. She said, "It's the business or the family." She said, "You got to make a choice." And when we were freshmen in not college, we were freshmen in high school. That was when we met each other, first day. We were in the same class. It was Miss Bungo's English class. And on the wall hung a Robert Frost poem. It's 2 paths diverged in yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled, and that has made all the difference. And when she gave me that choice, I don't know why this popped in my mind, but I said, business of the family. Because when I was in high school, I was looking at this poster as a 14-year-old. I'm like, well, what's the path less traveled? Because it was a picture. You get a path to the left and a path to the right. For some reason, my mind kept going down the middle. It was the road not taken was the path down the middle that no one had ever cut a path through. So when she gave me that path of the right or the left or the business or the family, I said, I want them both. And it's like I had to go down the path down the middle. And, it's the brush, it's the trees, it's the branches. You're going to get scraped up. And so that was the first time that I brought in some outside help. I needed someone to give me some perspective, because it's like I think a lot of times like an entrepreneur, it's like you're in this bottle right here and you cannot read the label on the outside of the bottle. It's a very dangerous place to be. And so I brought a guy in, his name is David Baker, and he helped me see what that third path could be. And we blew the business up. We kind of started all over again. Let go of some clients, let go of some employees, and we re-envisioned it to still be in the financial services space, but this time it was from an advisory standpoint, helping provide direction, strategy, coaching, education. And so that's where I've been for the last 10 or 12 years.
Wow. Well, so it's interesting too that you really have never worked for anybody in your whole life, right?
My last job, my last real job was waiting tables.
Yeah.
As an employee, it was waiting tables.
Wow.
And I was 19 years old, 20 years old.
Which is really interesting because, you have entrepreneurs they start some people go work for a little while or whatever, most. And we have had some others on, right, Ryan, where they've just never really worked for anybody, which I find fascinating, that you just kind of saw this opportunity and, ran with it in the very beginning.
It was funny when I was graduating college, I went and I interviewed at a couple of different places. And one of them was another web development company. They were doing SEO and pay-per-click, PPC back then. And I remember what they had offered me, and I kind of looked at the offer and I laughed at it because I was making substantially more
on your own.
As an entrepreneur. I was a solopreneur back then, working, out of my parents' bedroom, where I grew up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, let me keep doing this. And since then, I went to go, I did my MBA. I actually applied to Rice University, got accepted. And they were like, well, Mr. Lay, we're sorry, but you're going to have to shut your business down if you want to go to Rice University.
Wow.
Because they were, really taking someone down the path of accounting or finance, oil and gas, management. And I had went to go talk to someone at one of the big consulting firms.
That's kind of strange, right? You want to learn about business, you got to get out of your business.
It was odd.
Yeah. I mean, I get it if they're strictly thinking education, but to me, it sounds like,
it wasn't entrepreneurial though. And I think that was the frustration part. And you mentioned, I said I was going to follow your lead, and you're like, you don't follow anyone's lead. And I don't, but I've been that way though, since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that created a lot of conflict too, even growing up. It's just with my family, my parents. I remember whenever I was talking about this entrepreneurial thing with them, they were like, why don't you go get a real job?
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's not. And let's just see what happens.
Did you have siblings?
I did. I had a brother.
And did he have a real job, or did he?
So it's interesting. Really, really smart guy. He went to college at the University of Texas, and he got out and he thought he was going to go into law. And he called me up one day and he was like, hey, because he was doing radio, television, film, video. And he had worked with me on some projects. One of our early internet ventures, we actually were putting video online before YouTube existed. So around 2004,
you were way ahead of everything.
Yeah, I went to this, it was Macromedia, and Macromedia was acquired by Adobe. And so I went to this Macromedia conference in San Antonio, Texas. And this was 2004, and they had what was called Flash MX. And Flash MX was a animation platform, but they had just introduced streaming video. And I thought, that's the future of the internet right there, is the video piece. Because what better way to bring like humanity to the landscape, the digital landscape, than with video. So we shot our very first video around that 2004, 2005 time period, and it still exists. It is online. I actually had to go back and look that up. I had to go back in the Wayback Machine, and I found it, and actually I downloaded it to keep it in an archive. But there's a very young James Robert Lay with that video. And so Jonathan had actually joined me. He was an employee, worked with me for about 7 years. And then he went and he's now working in financial services as a VP of marketing.
Okay. But he was working with you for a while. Huh?
He was.
Yeah.
He was.
So how did you deal with that, with your parents saying, why don't you get a real job? And was that a challenge for you?
I would say yes, because it's like you want to please your parents, but at the same time, you also want to go and create your own path. And when you create your own path, there's this breaking away, and that there's this tension there that for me as an entrepreneur, it's been there, for the longest time, because even now I don't think they fully understand, who I am just as a person, because it's not a right or wrong. It's a matter of perspective. And it's just a different way about looking at the world and thinking, and what's your risk tolerance. I mean, I live in an abundance of risk. But I think to myself, what would it be like to have another path, a safer path? I don't think I could do it. I think I would become very frustrated. And I had someone tell me at one point, they're like, you're unemployable at this point. And I said, well, what's the worst case that can happen? Well, the worst that can happen is everything goes awry. It all blows up and we have to start over, I've even said, it's like, well, we just move in with your parents. I tell my wife, we just go to move in. And so it's like, when you think, well, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is you just start over and everything becomes a learning experience from the time before.
And I know you have children, and my kids are adults.
Mm-hmm.
So I've told them that, because you'll get the calls as your kids get older, and maybe even now, but about different issues that they're having, and they'll be really stressed out about work or this. And that's what I always tell them. Like, what's the worst that can happen? What is the worst, and it just puts everything in perspective, I think.
It really does, because at the end of the day, if you have your health, if you have the relationships that are the closest to you, I haven't been there. I've been close. But if you do have to lose it all and you do have to start over, if you have your health and you have your relationships, the other thing that you have is the experiences that you've gained leading up to that point. And I've talked to a lot of other entrepreneurs, because in 2017, I got into strategic coach. And that was such an important part of my own entrepreneurial journey, was being part of a community of entrepreneurs. Because I think historically, I was trying to do everything by myself.
How did you get involved in a strategic coach? Because this is a common thread with a lot of our guests. It's EO, it's Vistage, it's strategic coach. It's it's these groups that are mastermind groups essentially that provide support. And how did you get there?
So 2012, whenever we made the decision to blow that business up and start over, David Baker did not know it at the time, but he was a member of Strategic Coach. I worked with one of David's colleagues, Blair Enns, who's written a couple of really good books himself. But I kept hearing about the Strategic Coach from around 2012 to 2015, 16. And I was starting to get really curious. Who is the Strategic Coach? What is Strategic Coach? Dan Sullivan. Who is this guy? And I'm like, wait a minute. So I started Googling and learning from Dan, articles and podcasts. I was like, I'm just going to go join Strategic Coach myself. And I'll never forget when I called my wife, my first strategic coach up in Toronto. And I called her and I said, I finally found my people. Finally found like a place that I could belong, I could fit in. Because there's a bunch of entrepreneurs, all different walks, all different types of entrepreneurs. But up until that point, never had a community, never had a support group, never was able to just be open and honest about struggles, challenges. And it was in 2017, I would say that's probably when my biggest growth started, because every quarter you're having to review and reflect on what you did over the previous quarter. You're having to connect in with some areas that you might not have otherwise connected to. And then you're able to look out as, okay, well, what am I going to do over the next quarter to keep moving forward and making progress? And when you do that quarter after quarter and year after year, you can look back and say, wow, I've come a long way. And otherwise, you're just in the grind every single day. And some days you're like, in some years, I don't feel like I'm making any progress, but that's not true. Even if you don't feel like you're making progress in the business, you're growing as an entrepreneur, which in some cases is more valuable, because that becomes the fuel to achieve the next level of growth.
And so when you said you blew up the business, take us back there.
That was 2012.
Yeah.
October 4th. October 4th, 2012. Wow. And I was not in a good place. I was struggling a lot with addictions. I was a liar. I was lying to myself. I was lying to my team. I was lying to my wife. And that night was the night that she'd called her mom over, because we were just fighting, just cats and dogs, oil and water. I mean, it was bad. And her mom came over and said, if there's one thing you know Delina is, she's a truth teller. Don't lie to her. Is there anything that you want to tell her? And it was that third party. It was her mom just coming in and creating that space to open up and just to tell the truth about everything that had gone on, the things that I was struggling with, that I was just keeping to myself, the addictions, the pain, a lot of it. And once I started opening up, obviously it created pain for Delina, but it also started to create some healing too, because from my own personal experience, and I learned this from Dan as well in Strategic Coach, all growth, all progress starts by just simply telling the truth. And I think it's so easy to lie to ourselves. We can look ourselves in the mirror and we can lie, but if we're going to lie to ourselves, we're probably going to lie to everyone else around us. And so that truth telling has to start. It has to start with yourself every morning you wake up. Who am I? Why am I here? The existential questions of life. And I think the more, and I'm experiencing this right now as an entrepreneur, like I've had some harsh truths that I've had to face over the last 12 months. And is it scary? Absolutely. I would be lying if I said it wasn't. But I think because I've been here, because I've gone through some business transformations before, that experience gives me the confidence that I need to continue to take that next step.
Confront the brutal facts, but never lose faith, which is Out of Good to Great, which we were talking about, which I've been digging back into lately. But that is that's so true. You've got to confront the brutal facts. You have to look at the truth, but don't lose faith, right? You never lost faith.
No. And it's like now as I look to my next entrepreneurial leap, the only way to take that next step and to take that next leap is a leap of faith. And it's like, if you think about the entrepreneurial journey, it's like climbing a mountain, right? There's another great book I love reading, Peaks and Valleys. Same author that wrote Who Moved My Cheese.
Okay.
And Peaks and Valleys, it is the personification of the entrepreneurial journey. Some days you feel like you're on the top of the mountain. And other days you feel like you're in the valley. And it's those days when you feel like you're in the valley, that's when you got to make a choice of, are you going to make the next climb? But if you can look back to the mountains you've already climbed, and I wrote about this in Banking on Change too, it's like you're at the apex of awareness when you're at the top of the mountain. And there's no better place to be, because that gives you perspective of where you've been, and you can look down to see where you're at, and then you can look ahead at the next steps ahead. But the challenge is are you going to take those next steps? Because as you take the next steps, typically you're going to have to go down that mountain, go through a valley to then level up to the next mountaintop. And as you're going down, you're like, should I be doing this? It's scary. But then what's the alternative? You either you stay at the top of the mountain, and when you're up at that altitude, the air is thin. So you're not going to be thinking clearly. B, you can go back from where you came from, and you can go into your little cave of complacency and think that everything's going to be safe and secure when in reality, it's probably not, because the world is going to continue to change. And we're seeing that now more than ever. If you think about from 1994 to 2024, that's 30 years. And all of the changes that have transpired because of the internet and because of mobile devices. And then you take that and multiply it by 10 or multiply it by 100 with artificial intelligence to try to perceive what's going to happen between 2025 and 2030. It's beyond our comprehension. So for entrepreneurs, it's going to be this continuous evolution of letting go and learning and letting go and learning and climbing more mountains. Going into the cave of complacency, thinking that you're going to be safe from the storm, it's not going to turn out so well.
And so you've written 2 books, 2 best-selling books.
Yes.
Let's go back to when you wrote your first book. How did you happen to, because a lot of people aspire to write a book, and how did that happen?
So this actually it's one of these, 2012, right? It all connects back to then.
Okay.
Because that was a dark night of the soul moment. But it was also the next iteration of who James Robert Lay would become. And whenever David Baker came and visited us in Houston, he spent a day with me, my wife, and my team, but he spent most of the time with my wife and I. One of the things David said, he said, "You're going to write a book." And I said, "Dude, what are you talking about, write a book? I can't write a book." He goes, "You're going to write a book." But what he did, he planted this seed. And this is the power of thought, right? He planted an idea in my mind, something that I could not perceive yet, something I couldn't even believe, but he planted something. And it took about 6 years, 7 years for that seed over time to germinate and begin to put roots in. And it was 2019. It was January of 2019. I was being interviewed on a podcast. It was the Agency Insider podcast with Gray McKenzie. And one of the things that Gray asked, he said, "What's the big thing that's going to happen for you this year?" And it was early on. And out of nowhere, I blurted out, I said, "This is the year I'm going to write a book." And once those words left my mouth, and this video is still on the internet, I said, once those words left my mouth, I go, "Oh my gosh, I've just made a public commitment, not realizing what I said. And I'd been thinking about it. But once I said it and once I made it public, I knew that I had to follow through on that. And so going through that process from early 2019 to when we published the book in May of 2020, a lot of personal growth came from that. And I think one of the things that I did it wrong. It's like I did everything backwards here because I wrote the book from some curriculum that I had developed and that I had been teaching other banks and credit unions. So I had the curriculum. That was the foundation for the book. But then when it came time to publish the book, I was like, oh, we need to build an audience. And so now it's like I hear a lot of entrepreneurs because I've written a couple of books. I'm working on my third book right now. They're like, I want to write a book. And I'm like, great. Tell me about your audience. What does your platform look like? Do you have something that's big enough that can sustain the next level of growth that you're wanting to? And more importantly, it's like, why do you even want to write a book to begin with in the first place? And for me, I wanted to write a book because I wanted to expand my own brand. I wanted to elevate my influence as an entrepreneur within the vertical. And so the challenge, though, it's almost like, there's always challenges. Nothing's ever going to be easy. And I think when you look at that and like accept it, it makes it easier. That's right. It's getting comfortable being uncomfortable, as you and I were talking about before. So the book was supposed to be scheduled to publish in April of 2020. And I had this huge speaking tour lined up, and we were going to go to all these different conferences and do the book signing thing. And we know what happened in 2020. March, April. And I'll never forget, like I got the emails from the conferences and it was like a domino effect. One canceled and then the next and the next. I went to what's called the gap. I was griping about problems. And until my wonderful, lovely wife pulled me out of the gap. She didn't pull me out of the gap. She just asked the question. She goes, so what are you going to do about it? And it wasn't that kind. I call her, she is my helpful and sometimes empathetic guide. But I need that. I need someone to really challenge me. And so I thought about it. I was like, book. Don't really have an audience. Had a little bit of an email list at the time. Maybe a small social presence, but nothing major. I was like, we're going to start a podcast. And because of that, what could have been perceived at the time a very negative, challenging experience, you spend 12, 18 months writing a book only to launch it and the world's shutting down and you have nowhere to go speak about it. We launched the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. And that podcast has become one of the top 5%, close to top 3% podcasts in the world. And the connections that have come through that podcast, the conversations, the people that I've been able to meet that would not have been possible otherwise, that's been the magic of all of this. I think one of the coolest stories is like getting to meet Guy Kawasaki, worked with Steve Jobs. And there was this random message I sent him on LinkedIn. I saw he was publishing a book himself. He's published like probably 9 or 10. And I messaged him and I said, would you like to come on and have a conversation about the Remarkable book that you're publishing? Because that book came out of his podcast. I didn't think he would reply. 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, he said, sure. And to be able to,
Brian, we got to reach out to him.
I mean, I'll make the introduction, it's, and I think that's the thing. It's like, when you look back on all of these different inflection points, it's like Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots by looking backwards, especially in very challenging times. You're questioning and you're wondering what's going on. It's very hard to see the next step in the path. You start connecting the dots looking backwards, and I think that gives some perspective into what those next steps are. Because as I was, publishing the first book, launching the podcast, my personal brand it took off like a rocket ship. speaking opportunities.
I remember that's how I first heard about you. Like, was not through Corey, but was on my own, like just being on LinkedIn, and I like, oh, this guy's publishing, and I ordered your book, and I'm like, that's how I became exposed to you initially.
Yeah. And then it was like, that was a fun experience.
Yeah.
Let's do it again. And so each writing experience is different. And so the second experience was, we're writing Banking on Change. And this was a little bit of a different book because Banking on Digital Growth was a playbook. It was a strategic playbook that a financial institution could apply to unlock digital growth within their institution, their organization. Banking on Change was looking at what are the human transformations that need to happen, not just for banking, but for any type of organization in a period of exponential change. I shared a lot of personal perspective in there. I shared some of your perspective in the book and your meditation and how that provides clarity for you. Connected with a lot of others and shared their stories. So the book was a different writing experience than the first book. However, when Banking on Change was preparing to be published, we were about, 90% through with the manuscript. I get an email from the publisher on a Thursday afternoon. They had just laid off 90 employees, financial mismanagement by the CEO. And I was like, wonderful. And we were about to go to Mexico with the family, take the kids. And I had enough self-awareness at that point to like, you know what? We're not going to worry about it right now. We're going to go to Mexico. We're going to have a great time. Went to Mexico, had such a great time that we actually extended the trip while we were there, got back, and then I started dealing with, well, what are we going to do next? And what happened next really was unlocking what I see as my next level of growth. We actually finished the publishing process. I brought together a team and we published Banking on Change under our own imprint. And once again, it's like you transform what could be perceived as a failure or very negative, challenging, painful experience. You transform that into your next opportunity. And I think that's part of just being an entrepreneur. It's like it hurts, it stings. There's maybe some scar tissue there, but you just don't stop. And so now we're taking that into the next opportunity that we're seeing here with ourselves.
Tell us about that.
So as I look out into the future as best I can, we've got AI. It's been the big buzz. And it's interesting being a conference speaker because a lot of the keynotes that I've done this year and a couple of events, I was hearing some grumblings from attendees saying, I hear one more thing about AI. And I just started kind of paying attention to this. And if I look back at where I've been studying, it's the intersection of marketing and sales, technology and human behavior. The most interesting, I would say, out of all four of those is the human behavior. It's the human element. And as I look of the next 5 years with AI, sure, AI is going to, take off, and it already is taking off and do things that we can't perceive right now. But what's going to continue to remain true is the human experience. And in fact, we could probably see we're going to need to over-index on the human experience. We're going to need to come back to people because regardless of what businesses that we are in, every business is about people. It's about connection. It's about what you and I are doing right here. It's conversation. Those conversations provided the ability for what you've been doing so well with this podcast, which is to co-create content. You're creating space and a forum for someone to share. What I'm sharing here does not exist anywhere else. So knowledge has become commoditized because of large language models. And as I feel like we exit the knowledge economy, the next economy is going to be the wisdom economy. And wisdom is going to come from experience. And the more that we can, specifically as entrepreneurs, unlock the wisdom that we have had and unlock the wisdom of others, that creates a multiplier of opportunity. But the way to unlock that wisdom is it's just through connections, it's through conversations, it's the human experience.
I think should be your next book, The Wisdom Economy.
Hmm.
I love that. I mean, because, when you think of what you just said with AI and data, I mean, data and information will be accessible greater than we've ever could imagine, right?
Correct.
And the analysis of data. But wisdom is something totally different. It's a human quality, and and it comes through human experience. And that's a book right there. I think your next one.
I think it's always interesting
The
because
wisdom economy. That's huge.
But I think with what you're tapping into, this perspective you cannot pull this out of a large language model.
Yeah.
And when you think about communities like Vistage and EO and Strategic Coach and Elevated, these communities connect people together to have conversations and to look at, literally to get out of the bottle and just start looking at the label and just reading the label differently. And so I've shared things with you. You have shared things with me. I see you wrote it down right there, the wisdom economy.
Yeah.
Like that has come from this conversation. And it will be interesting to see what happens over the next 12 to 18 months. I am outlining the third book. And so I don't have a title for it, but you could see this book coming because we're going to look back to this video, just like the video with Agency Insider. And we could come back as this is an inflection point right here.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. So they could pause for a minute here and just reflect on that. We've named a book today. So I want to just wrap things up.
Sure.
Any last things? So I just want to give you an opportunity to share anything that you may want to share with our audience that I haven't asked.
You're doing a great job. I mean,
okay.
Just guiding the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So I would say, if I look towards the future, the next level for myself, the next level for, I would say, my marriage, for my family, for my business, it's to level up business. And when I talk about level up business, it's the operating system, what I've just shared with you with this wisdom economy, to help other entrepreneurs elevate their own brands, expand their influence, to grow their business, and to do that through conversations, to do that through connections, to do that through a sense of community. And if they can do that in their business, it's a rising tide lifts all ships. And yeah, there's always going to be some type of new technology. But to me, the most important technology that every entrepreneur has to master in this age of AI is not some large language model. It's not some data-driven automation. It's the technology that sits between their ears.
Mm.
It's their mind. And through these conversations, through communities like EO, Coach, Vistage, that's how we all get better. That's how we get better together.
That's a great way to tie a ribbon on this conversation. So thank you. We're going to go right now to the lightning round.
Okay.
So we're just going to hit you with some quick questions. I know you read a lot of books, and it's probably very hard for you to say, what is your favorite book?
That's actually very easy.
Oh.
Outwitting the Devil.
Outwitting
the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
Not a lot of people know about Outwitting the Devil. A lot of people think Napoleon Hill, they think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Outwitting the Devil was written in 1937 and not published, I believe, until 2011 because it was deemed too controversial at the time.
Oh, wow. Okay. I have not read it, so I'm I'm pleasantly surprised. I thought you pulled something out that I've already read, but great. Is there a song from, back maybe in your punk rock days that, or maybe not the punk rock days, but is there a song that's like your theme song for James Robert?
If you're going to go back to the punk rock days, because that's what you just planted in my mind, it'd be Blink 182, First Date.
Ah, okay.
And I remember Delina and we used to get to go to a lot of Warp tours and go see Blink 182 shows. So First Date by Blink.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Tell the truth.
That come from Delina?
It came from Delina.
And Delina's mother?
Yeah, it's definitely part of their family ethos.
Awesome. So we talked a little about AI. Are you optimistic about AI, or is it like scare you?
I'm not scared about it at all.
Okay, good.
It's more of curious. Mm-hmm. And I think anything is what you put a label to it. I mean, if you think it's going to be bad, it's the power of thought. If you think it's going to be bad, it's probably going to be bad. If you think that there's value to be created with it, you'll probably create value with it. And I think the most important thing is to just be curious, learn, explore, experiment. If you're scared of it, you're not going to play with it. And I think when it comes to AI, it's really reshaping and rethinking how we use it. I think I see a lot of leaders right now using AI, particularly like the most common being ChatGPT, using it like a Google search engine, when it really is more of a conversational model that, just like you and I are having a conversation, we should probably do the same. Which is one of the reasons, like when it comes to this, I've been working with my kids on building this capability themselves. My daughter, she's 12 years old, has already written 2 books, illustrated 2 books.
Oh my goodness.
Herself.
That's amazing. If you could have dinner with any person, living or dead, who would it be?
Off the top of my head, and I think because of just how influential he's been within my own thinking, Napoleon Hill.
Ah, wow.
Is one that comes off the top. Once again, I read so much. So a lot of authors, particularly from like the late 1800s to the early 1900s, because I think what they were writing and thinking about back then, there are cycles of time. There was another book called The Fourth Turning. It was written in 1997, very prophetic to kind of where we're at right now in 2024, about to go into 2025. And what they looked at is how the world works on these 80-year cycles. And so if you're looking out at the world right now thinking it's very confusing and chaotic time, have some hope, because that was the whole essence of the fourth turning. Is there are 4 seasons that run every 20 years. You've got spring, you've got summer, fall. We're in a period of winter right now.
We are?
According to the fourth turning model.
Feels pretty good to me, actually.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's a matter of perspective.
Okay.
I think when you have that mindset and you look for the good in everything, you'll see the good in everything. And so that's what the perspective of the fourth turning is that what spring always comes after winter.
Yep.
So you got to keep looking for that.
And each season is unto itself. Now, I know you're not from here. Do you know any restaurants here?
Thasos?
Tassos.
Yes.
So it's a great one. That's one of our directors, good friends, Sophia, who the family owns that. So that's a great recommendation. Night. Yeah, we love that place. What's something you're grateful for today?
I'm just grateful for my wife being here. I travel a lot, and I've been, come with me. No, we've got 4 kids. Come with me. So, just the fact that she is here to share this time and the time with you, it's always time well spent.
You guys have to come and stay longer next time. That's all. What's a travel destination that's on the top of your list that you haven't been to yet?
Spain, Portugal, and Greece are the next ones getting tossed around of where we're going to take the kids. We've had an opportunity to do a lot of travel, see a lot of things, and are starting to take the kids places. And to me, that's the best experience that we can share is experiences with them and see the world through their eyes.
Oh, that's great. And What's a new skill you're learning? And I know you're curious and you're always learning new things. Is there something new that you're experimenting with or learning?
It's a lifelong process of letting go. It's a skill. Letting go of beliefs, letting go of things of the past that they're weights, they are anchors that prevent us from doing the next thing.
Great answer.
Yeah.
What's a fear that you've overcome? Kind of a fearless person, I think, but
It's a fear I've overcome. You know, my biggest fear, actually, if we're going to talk fears,
okay. Yeah. Let's get real.
my biggest fear is going bankrupt. My biggest fear is losing it all. And that's where it's like, I keep pushing the chips back in the table, to the center of the table, because that's the fear that I got to confront. Because if I don't face that fear, then I don't achieve my full potential.
You're all in.
I'm all in.
Now you're healthy. You're a healthy guy. What's your favorite thing? You describe your morning routine for everybody, because it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I wake up in the morning and roll out of bed. Wim Hof. Wim Hof is a breathing methodology. 10, 15 minutes of Wim Hof breathing, a little bit of gratitude reflection after that. And then I go and I hop into my cold plunge. It's set at 38, 39 degrees. I'm in there for 2 minutes and 5 seconds. I set my timer on my watch. Everything is very regimented. It's taken me a while to learn discipline and learn a morning routine. When I'm in my morning routine, I have a great day. It's like I set that, the morning sets the day up for success. If I'm out of the morning routine, because after the cold plunge, then I go for a run and a walk, and then I go lift weights. And then after that, it's breakfast and food planning, food prepping. But if I don't do the morning routine, it's not a good day. If I do the morning routine, it's a great day.
Wow, that's powerful. And very important. How can people get in touch with you?
Google me. JamesRobertLay.com is my website. You can Google me, James Robert Lay, or the fastest, the easiest way. Look me up on LinkedIn, James Robert Lay, or send me a text. My number is 832-549-5792.
Wow. Well, that's great. And you're a public speaker. You've done speaking engagements all over the world. You have 2 best-selling books, and you're really all about helping people. You were helping, kind of focused on the financial services industry, but now you're saying, hey, I can help a lot more people. And so that's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for being part of this journey with me.
Yeah. Thanks, James Robert. Great having you here.
Thanks,
and thank you, Delina.
Thanks for tuning in to Locality's Making Bank podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to catch the latest episodes, and visit localitybank.com today to learn more about all the benefits of banking local.